Prof. Hu, you heard that, I heard that as well. And what does that mean going forward if indeed the DPP did not get the majority in Parliament and the KMT and the opposition becomes the biggest bloc in the legislature? What does that say for the workings of the Parliament and just getting the job done? Are they setting themselves up for some kind of stalemate and dysfunction? What's your sense?
Well, essentially, you have a hung parliament right now in Taiwan. Of course, the president has executive powers to do a lot of things, especially when it comes to foreign relations and security policies. He has huge leeway. So in that sense, William Lai has the discretion to do that and essentially set policies and the tone for cross-strait relations. But when it comes to particular things like the budget, defense policies, and in particular, laws, the making of new laws in particular, all these kind of things, the opposition, and depending on whether or not the KMT and the TPP will work together, and I expect them to work together, which means to say that they can block a lot of new initiatives proposed by William Lai. So in terms of a lot of the new domestic policies, particular ones linking to legislation, then it will be difficult for William Lai to actually push through unless he can find some kind of compromises with the KMT and indeed to some extent the TPP.
Yeah, he did talk about putting differences aside, but much harder when it comes to foreign relations. I'm wondering what might be going through China's mind at this point. Is it just going to be pressure upon pressure going forward?
Well, I would imagine that to be the case, right? Certainly, China has made it quite clear that although they did not express explicit preference for the KMT candidate or the TPP candidate, but they made it quite clear that William Lai is somebody whom they don't like and whom they term as a separatist and somebody whom they don't trust. So now moving forward, I would expect China, or at least the conventional wisdom among analysts is that they expect China to watch William Lai's actions very closely for the next 4 months in the lead up to his inauguration speech. And they may even escalate things a bit to put pressure on William Lai, essentially to send a message to him not to be too radical and to send not to send certain gestures in his inauguration speech that may be perceived as pushing Taiwan further along the road of so-called formal independence. So these are things that I expect Beijing to do, and I expect them to maybe even do some measures, small measures perhaps, relating to economic restrictions. They've already done so before the elections, and now they have no reason not to do so, now that their least preferred candidate has won.
And conversely, the most preferred candidate, I suppose, you could argue, for the US has won. How do you think relations are going to shape up there? Because in some ways, the US does use Taiwan politics for geopolitical reasons.
Well, this is something that the US, at least at a political level, they deny. They say that they don't actually have any preferred candidate and they will respect the choice of the Taiwanese people. But if you take a look at the record of Taiwan-US relations, in particular for the past 8 years under a DPP administration, it's quite clear that Taiwan has moved closer to the US. And I would expect this trajectory and trend to continue under William Lai. You know, I certainly don't expect William Lai to do anything drastic or radical and to declare formal independence, because this is also not something which the US wants. But I do anticipate that he will move Taiwan closer, maybe in a small way or in certain symbolic ways, closer to the US. And not only that, if you take a look at who he has by his side, which is essentially now the new Vice President, Xiaobi Kim, who used to be the former Taiwanese representative to the US, and she's widely credited for enhancing Taiwan's ties to the US. And she has a lot of American friends and contacts. So I expect all these kinds of dynamics to continue under the William Lai presidency. And of course, obviously, this is something which is not what China wants.
Yeah, final question to you, Professor, because we want to I want to ask you what William Lai is going to prioritize going forward, because foreign relations aside, this election was very much about local issues as well. It was about the economy. It was about, prices and wages not rising fast enough. And it was, about many other things. How do you think he's going to prioritize that whole big list going forward as president?
I think first and foremost, he's going to prioritize some of the hot button issues, which is widely known to have registered dissatisfaction among the voters in Taiwan. As you mentioned, things like low real wage growth, high property prices, inflation, and youth unemployment rates. So I think he's going to address that. And also because he presents himself as a continuity candidate. And indeed, Tsai Ing-wen also mentioned that, she has 8 years in powers and she has tried her best, but for some of the things which she did not complete and maybe she did not do as well as she would have liked, then she's handing over the baton to Mr. Lai. And Mr. Lai is expected to complete those tasks. But whether or not he can actually do that is another different story altogether. But at least that's on the domestic side of things. But when it comes to foreign relations and security relations, I don't expect him to deviate much from Tsai Ing-wen's policy, which means to say that I don't also expect him to compromise and also give what essentially Beijing wants, which is to explicitly recognize the 1992 consensus. And all this means is that Beijing is certainly not going to compromise, especially under a Xi Jinping presidency. And so what you're going to get is the existing status quo of no dialogue.
Prof. Hu, it's been so informative speaking with you. Really appreciate your thoughts. We have to leave it there for now. Professor Tiang Boon from the School of Social Sciences at Nanyang Technological University joining us from Singapore.